In the harsh heart of Chile's barren Atacama Desert, the San Jose mine unravels, an imposing abyss penetrating deep into a craggy mountain peak. Much like threading a needle, the entryway, a modest 16 by 16-foot gateway, invites you into the core of this geologic monster. The vein-like network of this maze twirls and winds, spiraling inward, with the pathway constricting with every twist and turn. The San Jose mine, boasting more than a century of existence, had essentially eroded its inner framework due to years of excavating and exploding. Known for its rudimentary work environments and cursory safety protocols, the mine was notorious for escape routes that were inadequate in crisis scenarios because they lacked the essential ladders for miners to utilize them. On the dawn of August 5, 2010, a group of men toil nearly 2,500 feet below the surface, handling freshly detonated ore onto a dump truck. Another team is at work about 100 feet above them, reinforcing a tunnel, while others are taking a breather in the refuge, a chamber carved from the rock approximately 2,300 feet beneath the surface. The refuge, with its concrete block confines and heavy metallic entrance, was designed to serve as a haven during emergencies, but also doubled as a relaxation area. Fresh air was channeled in from the surface as a reprieve from the sweltering heat. In the afternoon, the miners witnessed an explosion and were engulfed in dust as the routes leading to the surface crumbled. It echoed like a colossal high-rise was toppling above them. A solitary slab of diorite, rivaling the height of a 45-story skyscraper, had detached from the remainder of the mountain, plummeting through the mine's strata, instigating a domino effect as the mountain atop it also collapsed. This chunk, they would later be informed, measured around 550 feet in height and weighed a staggering 770,000 tons, twice the mass of the Empire State Building. In the resulting tremor, several men were thrown off balance by a shockwave, as the walls started to shudder and pebbles akin to the size of oranges started falling down on them. When the trembling had ceased, the men realized they were ensnared. A rapid assessment revealed that all lifelines to the surface had been severed. The power supply, the communication system, and the flow of water and pressurized air. The men, oblivious of the extent or the cause of the catastrophe and assuming they'd be retrieved within a matter of hours or a few days at most, retreated to the refuge. This reinforced sanctuary, approximately the size of a classroom, was equipped with supplies intended to nourish 25 men for 2 days. The food inventory consisted of tin of salmon, tin of peaches, tin of peas, 18 tins of tuna, 24 liters of condensed milk, and 93 packets of biscuits, not accounting for a few that were secretly consumed by some men and some out-of-date medicines. Additionally, there were a scant 10 bottles of water, although thousands of liters were being used to cool their machinery's engines. Although tainted, greasy, and occasionally used for bathing, it was potable enough to sustain them. They quickly learned that food rationing would be strict, given that if each man consumes 1 or 2 biscuits and a spoonful of tuna each day, the provisions might last about a week. A miner named Mario Sepulveda, one of the leaders throughout the crisis, would line up 37 plastic cups in rows and ladle 1 teaspoon of canned fish into each cup, then add some water, creating a broth. He then distributed 2 biscuits to each man. "Savor your meal," he instructs. "This is gourmet fare, make it last." That solitary meal at midday likely contains less than 300 calories and is expected to sustain them until the following midday. Soon they would expand the menu to include soup they would prepare using the industrial water in a truck's air filter using a single can of tuna, with no salt and only a handful of peas and a dash of motor oil for flavoring. Eventually, the growling of their collective stomachs will become so deafening that, in the echo chamber of the mine, some will confuse it with the sound of the mountain crumbling. The majority of the men took refuge in the refuge, where, after several days, the rank odor begins to accumulate and stew, transmuting the air into a broth of body stench, prompting one miner to later comment, "I've smelled cadavers before, and after a while it smelled worse than that." As the days pass, a type of society emerges. The men hold daily prayer gatherings. They play checkers on a cardboard board and dominoes manufactured by one miner by removing and slicing up the white plastic frame of his truck's reflective traffic hazard triangle. They occasionally believe they hear drilling, but no deliverance appears. At times, the humor veers towards the morbid, as evidenced when one miner tells the lone Bolivian in the group, "You better pray they come for us, because if they don't, given that you're Bolivian, you'll be the first one we're going to eat." Some of the men found such humor to be a relief. Others, however, could not share in the laughter, realizing that if one of them were to die, they might be forced to contemplate such a course of action. Meanwhile, above ground, several potential saviors descended 2.8 miles into the mine, only to be halted by the monolithic rockfall. Officials also discovered that the building-sized mass was still in motion, making another collapse a potential imminent threat. Mining and drilling experts were left trying to deduce where they could drill without further destabilizing the already fragile mountain. As time passed, drilling specialists from around the globe would join the endeavor. Adjacent to the mine entrance, the miners' families established a base, dubbing it Camp Esperanza, or Camp Hope, where they could remain while anxiously awaiting news of their loved ones and maintaining pressure on governmental officials. The story rapidly spread across the globe, and the Chilean media projected the miners' probability of survival at less than 2%. After 2 weeks trapped beneath the earth, many of the miners were having difficulty moving, and their ribs began to protrude through their skin. The sound of daily drilling had by now become unmistakable, but the miners were in the dark about how long a rescue might take. They would eventually listen to over a dozen drills failing to reach them, a series of letdowns that felt like a second demise. By this point, the meager food supply could only provide each man with one cookie every 2 days. Eventually, they extended this interval to 3 days to prolong the life of their dwindling provisions. At one moment, a single sliver of peach, roughly the size of a thumb, was unearthed and carefully segmented into 33 fragments. On another occasion, one of the men suffered a brief spell of blindness, the initial indication of a common side effect of starvation, brought on by a deficiency in vitamin A. On the 17th day, a drill that had been intensifying in volume abruptly ceased, its noise supplanted by the hiss of leaking air. One of the drills had breached the chamber. The miners raced to the site and began fervently hammering it with wrenches, like children enthusiastically whacking a piñata. The men, overwhelmed with laughter and cheer, marked the occasion by circulating a plastic bottle brimming with murky water, as though it were an expensive champagne. They fastened messages to the drill bit, signaling to the surface that all 33 of them were still surviving. After 17 tormenting days, the men were finally offered a glimmer of hope. However, the conclusion of their nightmare was still a distant prospect. As food, clean water, a communication line, and other necessities were funneled down the 4.5-inch borehole, the men's jubilation was tempered upon learning that their rescue, which included devising a way to reach them and extract them without triggering a collapse of the already fragile mine, could take up to 4 months. If they are indeed confined until Christmas, they will have been trapped underground for a duration double that of any human in recorded history. While the men were able to lean on each other during the grueling periods of acute starvation, there lurked a greater threat. Men grappling with this collective frustration in the infernal depths, and their disputes became increasingly tense. Meanwhile, above ground, they were metamorphosing into international sensations, as media from around the globe interviewed their families, and a Chilean magnate initiated a campaign to amass funds with the goal of ensuring that all the men were millionaires upon their emergence. Potential discord was looming in relation to media coverage of individual miners, including the vainglorious claims of Sepulveda, who stated in a letter to his family that he was the undisputed leader, inciting resentment among the men. Sepulveda also fostered suspicion by jesting about cannibalism, jokes that, as the men regained their vitality, adopted a threatening undertone, leading some to harbor concerns for their well-being. The incongruity of being rich and famous while still ensnared underground played tricks on their minds, but they maintained unity in a key aspect, forming an agreement that the rights to their narrative would be shared among all of them in 33 equal portions. This pact would result in a few disputes further down the line, but ultimately, it would endure. The rescue couldn't be performed through the existing hole, and necessitated a new hole 28 inches in diameter. The complications encountered in drilling the initial hole were now amplified, as this hole had to be wide enough to accommodate the men. Over time, many countries would dispatch aid, including the U.S., with a bespoke 26,000-pound drill supplied by a company in Pennsylvania, and a leading American driller contributing to the final rescue attempt. The decision was made to undertake 3 concurrent drilling operations to expedite the rescue of the men as swiftly as feasible. On September 17th, one of the drills punctured through to the men via a 17-inch hole, and this was expanded over the following weeks to the requisite 28 inches. From that point, a few days were necessary to extract the drill bit from the hole, and then a rescuer was dispatched in a capsule known as the Phoenix, specifically engineered for this task. The first man, Florencio Avalos, embarked on his ascent just before midnight on October 12th. He surfaced around 30 minutes later, welcomed by his family, global news teams, and the President and First Lady of Chile. Approximately 24 hours thereafter, Luis Urzúa was the last man to emerge. Upon his ascent, the 69-day ordeal of the San Jose mine officially concluded. Remarkably, none of the men incurred severe physical injuries, although the majority grappled with enduring psychological and emotional afflictions, haunting nightmares, bouts of depression, and struggles with alcohol dependency. Today, the healing process for most of these miners has commenced. The men receive pensions courtesy of the Chilean government, ample enough for the senior miners to comfortably retire. The younger miners, for the most part, have reintegrated into the workforce, with several now holding above-ground positions within the National Mining Company. Among them, one has transitioned into the role of a truck driver, while another has ventured into the fruit business. Contrary to expectations, none of the miners amassed wealth from their extraordinary ordeal or the subsequent media publicity. However, the truly invaluable outcome remains. They are all still alive. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked what you saw, be sure to check out the other great content on our channel. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.